One of the most popular sessions that I run, and this has been the same for decades, is the training session where we invite the students to guess the next move, or how good is your chess, or whatever you want to call it. It's important that the coach picks out critical moments in the game rather than asks the student to predict every move. That gets a bit laborious. But if you're careful and you pick out the critical moments in the game, then students can learn a lot from this exercise, as well as having a fair bit of fun. So in session 6 of the Guildford Junior Chess Club, I showed the kids an improving group with quite a few strong players in it, the famous game between Wilhelm Steinitz and Kurt von Bardeleben. And this game was played in Hastings in 1895. I could have covered up the score of the game, but on the other hand, ChessBase has got good notes, which I think the viewer can enjoy as we go through the game. Of course, this won't be a guess the next move video, but let's go through the game now. Okay, well, Steinitz was white, and the opening will be very familiar to players of all levels. It's the standard Italian game, where black plays a solid move, bishop c5. It really is a question of taste as to whether you prefer knight f6 here, two knights defence, or bishop c5. Of course, after knight f6, you've got to be ready for knight g5, as we've seen in an earlier video on this channel. Bishop c5, just very solid, doesn't allow white to play knight g5, and now white's got to think for himself, how do I get the advantage here? Well, there's always the good old Evans gambit, if you fancy sacrificing a pawn at this stage. Not a bad move, and leads to some interesting attacking opportunities. Most top grandmasters games these days tend to prefer d3, the quiet Italian game, but in fact white's intentions are anything but quiet after this move. White intends a slow build-up. He doesn't commit to anything. He doesn't offer any exchanges in the opening, keeps the tension. And this is what most grandmasters play these days when they come to this position. There's also the stodgy move, knight c3, which is seen frequently in beginners junior chess, where young players are told to develop the pieces. Unfortunately, this stodgy move leads to a kind of barren equality, and maybe even black just copying white's moves. Yes, it's not really very exciting, that line, although it's okay. And finally, the move Steinitz played, which has been the mainline move for quite a long time, c3. And black played knight f6. Well, white has to make a choice now. And as I say, the modern move is d3 here, avoiding exchanges. But Steinitz was quite happy to play d4. And I'm sure if you asked a strong player who didn't have any knowledge of this position what white should play, they'd almost certainly say d4. Because it gains time on the bishop, it seems to form a big pawn centre, and everything looks rosy in the garden. But black has bishop b4 check here, which is the only good move, and that avoids a loss of time. Black's just not going to allow white to sit there with this broad centre. He's going to disrupt it somehow. Well, again, this is the parting of the ways. White can play bishop d2. Against that, there are two reasonable moves for black. Black can play the classical bishop takes bishop. Knight takes bishop d5. This is a move we see in the featured game. And it's really the type of move black should be looking to play all the time in the open game, e4, e5, because it frees up the black pieces to come out and play. Well, that's a possibility. The other possibility for black is knight takes e4, which is sharper. I can't go into the depth of this variation here, or that would be here all day. But Steinitz preferred knight c3. And this is a gambit move, offering black the chance to take the pawn, which can lead to significant complications. But unfortunately for us these days, they're complications which have been well mapped out. I mean, this variation's 100 years old or more. And over that time, this position's been analysed almost to death. But von Bardeleben, back in 1895, played d5. And on the face of it, this looks like a pretty good move because white's got to take it. Black gets to recapture. let's not forget this knight is pinned, so white's not winning material here. And after castles, black plays bishop e6. And it looks as though black is getting a decent game. All he needs to do now is to castle, and then everything will be rosy in the garden. And note, black is threatening to win a piece here by playing knight takes c3, or win material. Now, this was the first position where I asked the group to guess the next move, because it's the first really critical position in the game. And it's a position where actually white can make a mistake, can't he? Because of the loose bishop on c4. Well, I'm pleased to say that most players got white's next move, which is bishop g5. Pretty good move, just threatening the queen, developing a new piece, preventing black from castling. Basically, in this position, if white allows black to castle unhindered, then his advantage is going to evaporate. So he's got to create action before black can castle. And that's, of course, exactly what Steinitz does in this game. Anyway, suspecting nothing, black played bishop e7. Black is still okay here, as we're going to see a little bit down the line. But he's got to play very accurately. And now Steinitz initiated a sequence of exchanges, which on the first sight looks rather toothless. 3 pairs of minor pieces come off the board. But this was the second critical moment in the game where I asked the kids to guess the next move for white. And I think they found this one pretty easy. Rook to e1. This is the point of Steinitz's play. Again, he prevents black from castling by virtue of the simple pin on the knight. f6. A good move, but black doesn't follow it up correctly, unfortunately for him. White goes queen e2, threatening checkmate. Black drops back, protecting against the mate. White plays rook a c1. And now I think black misses the best move. The move he plays, to all intents and purposes, looks very strong. c6. Blocks the rook out on c1. Intends maybe king f7 and then knight d5. After which, if allowed, I don't think black would have any problems whatsoever. And simply seems to solidify the central position. But it is a blunder. And black had to simply play king f7 here, which has been recommended by quite a few commentators here, originally by Tarash, according to the notes. And I'm just wondering why he didn't do this. Apparently, according to Tarash, white's got nothing better here than to actually sacrifice the exchange, like this. And according to him, after the king moves and white takes on either g7 or b7, black has good prospects of a draw. I'll take this a little bit further, and I will say that if white had gone in for this continuation, then actually he's probably worse here. And I'll give a few moves. Here we are, rook a c8, taking the open file, threatening mate. g3, and then rook c7. Well, I don't think the ending, if white exchanges the rooks, is very good for him, because black can put his king on d5 and get the rook active from h8 very quickly. So he's got to preserve the rook, and now black comes to the 7th rank. And suddenly, I think, from my chair, it's white who's struggling to make a draw here, despite the fact he's got 2 pieces for the exchange. 2 pawns for the exchange, excuse me. So if we go back to king f7, I think this move actually would have given better chances. And it's worthwhile noting here that if queen c4 check, black can play knight d5. And I don't think white's got any tactical way of taking advantage of the pinned knight. Meanwhile, black can play rook e8 or c6, and his position holds together. But clearly, after c6, going back to the game itself, von Bardeleben didn't see white's next move. And I challenged the group to find white's next move, and none of them found it. So clearly, it's possible to miss the next beautiful move, d5. Clearance sacrifice. White offers the pawn to clear the d4 square for his knight, and that is quite a magnificent outpost for the knight. White's threatening knight f5, which wins the game immediately if black allows it, thanks to the pin and the checkmate and so on. So black has to move his king, And now white plunges in with the knight. And this really is a horrible position for black. The knight is just dominating here, radiating power. It's often said that a knight entrenched on the 6th rank is worth more than a rook. And certainly that's true in this case. Well, black kept playing, offering exchanges. He obviously saw white's next move and thought, well, I'm going to hang on here because there are some mating threats on the back rank, which I can call upon if I need to. And he certainly needed to quite quickly, because white's threatening queen takes g7 check here. And when black blocks, white has the discovered attack knight g5 check, which was again a move which the group found fairly easily. But what they didn't see was what happened next in the game. Well, I say that they didn't see it. One group got rook takes e7 check, which is a bit of a killer blow, to be absolutely honest with you. But they didn't see black's next move, the amazing resource, king f8. Well, this caused a stir in the group, and it was suddenly time to reevaluate. Suddenly, all of white's pieces, every single one of them, is attacked. It's an extraordinary situation. Every single one of white's pieces is attacked. And he somehow got to rescue the day. But Steinitz did so in a remarkable way. He played rook f7 check. And the point of this is that if black takes the rook with the queen, white interposes rook takes c8 check first and actually wins a piece. Rook takes rook, queen takes rook check, and then the knight may retreat or enter to e6 at his convenience on the next move. So rook f7 and now king g8. And again, I asked the group to find white's next move, which again is an extraordinary idea in itself. White played rook g7 check. The finish of this game made it very famous because it's a very rare scenario where white's rook is charging around on the 7th rank, completely immune to capture. Well, I mean, black can capture it, but then he loses straight away. And black is being pushed from pillar to post. Well, if black takes with the queen, we take on c8. If he takes with the king, we can take his queen. If he goes king f8 here, we've got knight takes h7 check. And that's a complete killer, because once again, all the previous conditions exist. And if king e8, well, knight takes f6 check. And we can get the black queen either with checkmate or check. So after rook f7 check, king g8, rook g7, black had to go into the corner. And now rook takes h7 check. Whereupon apparently black resigned. I have heard the story that von Bardeleben didn't actually resign at this point. He walked out the tournament hall, never to return. Having seen the finish, he didn't want to experience it for himself on the board. But yeah, this is an extraordinary finish because black has to play in this position king to g8. If he takes the rook with the queen, we take on c8 once more. King g8, the rook comes back to g7. Well, if king f8, knight h7, so the king has to go to h8 again. And now the killer blow, queen h4. Extraordinarily, white manages to include his queen in the attack. Black's now got to take the rook, and that leads to the infiltration of the queen. And an extraordinary, a long and beautiful finish, the check. Well, the notes give king e8. If he goes king d6, then queen takes f6 check is an immediate kill. But this king e8 move just prolonging the agony, really. Beautiful finish. Here we go. Knight f7 check, king d7, and then queen d6. I failed to find a player over the years, whatever strength they are, whatever age they are, who is not impressed by the combination at the end of that game and the beautiful finish that could have been if von Bardeleben hadn't taken a trip to Hastings Pier after rook takes h7 check. So that is a pretty good example of a game which is excellent for the How Good Is Your Chess format. Hope you enjoyed it. The kids enjoyed it. We had a great time. And there will be no chess club next week because it's half term. But we look forward to session 7 in a couple of weeks' time.